Welcome to Kathryn Raaker's World. Innovation, culture, adventure, fashion and health, artists, destinations, traditions. This is Kathryn Raaker's World.
Hi, this is Kathryn Raaker, Kathryn Raaker's World, and I want to introduce you to our guest today. His name is Desmond Astaire. He's from Marquette, Illinois. He is the $5,000 winner, grand prize winner of the wonderful L. Ron Hubbard, Writers of the Future. And he's in volume 38. I'm very excited for him. And I want to welcome you to our show today. I'm so excited for you. Was this the first time you won the award, and it was the first time you entered the contest, Writers of the Future?
Yeah, so it was the first time that I won. The contest is designed for new writers. It's designed to identify new writers and then help them learn even more skills and then help launch careers. That's what L. Ron Hubbard designed it for. I think I entered about four other times and got various placements that didn't get me into the book or to the workshop. And then in December, I got the phone call that the short story Gallows had placed first for quarter 4 of volume 38, and which meant that I got to go to Hollywood and do the workshop and compete for the Golden Pen Award, which I ended up winning.
Oh, that's really exciting, don't you think? How did your family feel? Because they got to go too, didn't they?
Yeah, my wife got to go with me, and which was very fun because her support helps make my writing hobby into a career. Without, we're a special needs family, and so without her support, I wouldn't be able to have the time to pursue this passion.
Right, and it is a passion, I can tell you. The first time I wrote anything, I was like, "Oh, I don't know," and you're not sure. You're not sure.
Yeah.
And so anyhow, but let me ask you a question. You've been in the military for 17 years, and you're a public affairs officer. Could you tell me a public affairs? Is that right? Public
Yes.
affairs officer. Tell me can you tell me what you do in the military?
So actually what I do in my day job and the training that I received actually helped my writing career. I went to the Defense Information School and learned how to be a photojournalist. And so they taught us there the elements of storytelling, how to do interviews, how to construct a story. Now that was in the context of news and feature journalism, but those skills I was able to take and turn around into my creative writing hobby. And so during my day job, I get to be a storyteller, and in my spare time, I get to be a storyteller. It's pretty cool. And ultimately, the job is linking the public to what we do with the taxpayers' dollars.
How long did it take you to write Gallows?
That happened over the course of 3 or 4 weeks or so. Usually I take about 2 or 3 hours on a Saturday. I go to a coffee shop and I just write, just throw it on out there. I don't really plot out a whole lot of my projects. I just kind of, or at least my short projects, I just write it, and then they kind of just take on a life of their own and just happen. And a lot of times I'm visualizing the scenes in my head like as if it's a movie that I'm watching. So writing is especially fun for me. And for projects like Gallows, were especially fun because obviously I had to go back and reread it several times and do edits with the Galaxy Press staff and mentors. And going back to reread the story, it was just as much fun for me to read as it was to write the first time. So that was very fun.
Well, you know, what's so exciting about this is that it's actually in its 38th year. Am I correct?
Yeah, the 39th year
39th
actually
year,
just started. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the longest running competition of its kind.
Yeah.
L. Ron Hubbard actually started it in 1983. Were you surprised to find out all this information?
Absolutely. He was quite an adventurer, all the way back to his childhood. And so for him to take all the experiences and combine it with his learner's brain and then his leadership roots, to turn it into a contest to help establish and mentor new writers, he was just the perfect guy for the job. And it's, I mean, so not only was he, one of the greats of the golden age of pulp fiction. I mean, he wrote in just about every genre you can imagine, but then established certainly the most advantageous and lucrative resource for emerging writers. There's no words to describe how grateful I am to having got to be a part of it, and then hopefully get established enough and experienced enough to then give back to the program, just as so many of those mentors have.
Now, you were paired with an illustrator, am I correct?
That's right.
And could you tell us his name?
Yeah, that's Nick Jizba out of Nebraska. Very talented guy who a lot of his art focuses on landscapes, actually, or his strengths are in landscapes. And so we actually didn't meet formally until the big art reveal. And but I knew ahead of time who he was, so I got to scope out some of his artwork. And I just remember thinking, oh man, I feel so sorry for this guy, because the story Gallows focuses a lot of kind of a little bit of psychological thriller that focuses about time travel that you don't really see. It's more about the character reacting to the consequences of time travel. So I was very worried for whoever my artist was going to be, because I couldn't even visualize, if I was going to paint a scene, there wouldn't be a whole lot of sci-fi elements to it. But Nick, he did it. If you look at the illustration he did, he just perfectly rendered, leveraging the natural elements of the outdoors, the perfect rendering of the tension and the conflict of the story. It was beyond impressive. It could not have been any better.
So to me, that's exciting when you've got a piece that you want to convey to others. So are you writing all the time now?
Oh yeah, I've been writing since I was 13. I think is when I started writing nonstop. And then around 2017, I decided to kind of buckle down and say, okay, if I want to do something with this and someday make a career of it, what do I need to do? And I actually ended up reaching out and meeting Stephen Lawson, who is an officer in the Kentucky Army National Guard. And I said, how do you take this to the next level? Do you have any recommendations? How do I become a professional? He pointed me to the writers of the feature contest. He was a winner of volume 33. And so I read into the contest, discovered what it was all about, and then decided, okay, I'm not going to do anything else until I win this thing and get the opportunity to go to the workshop and learn from these household names of speculative fiction. And by some bizarre turn of events outcome, that's exactly what happened.
Cash prize of $5,000. I bet you were pretty excited about that, right?
Yeah, that was certainly that was certainly nice. I'd say even better than that was the opportunity to go to the workshop, because that workshop is a week-long opportunity to learn from the household names of speculative fiction, everyone from Kevin J. Anderson to Tim Powers, Dr. Nnedi Okorafor, um, uh, Brian Sanderson is one of the judges that has come and mentored. So I mean, you throw out names to a dozen different genre readers, and they'll know who one of these authors are. And we who are in Volume 38 got to sit in the same room and learn the craft from these people. It's a master's lesson from a dozen well-established people, and that, I mean, that's worth 5 times the cash prize. So the cash prize was awesome. I was able to do a lot of business investments for for establishing my professional writing career. Actually, my car just broke down, so a lot of money went to that. That was very nice. But yeah, the insurmountable value was getting to sit through that workshop and learn from the greats.
Now tell me how you got there on a Monday or a Sunday or something like that, and you start immediately. What are how long are the workshops when you go?
So they were long days, but it was like the fun kind of long days. And part of that is when the workshop would end in the evening, we take a dinner break and then go on for a couple hours. Afterwards, we would all meet down in the hotel lobby bar area, and then sit with our mentors and just talk casually till all hours of the night.
What does the wife do? What does she do when you're doing all of that?
Well, so she came in about halfway through. She came in for the gala, the gala, which was, oh my gosh, if you can encapsulate the image of Hollywood, that's exactly what the gala was like. She flew in the night before. We stayed up late, me introducing her to all my new friends and all these mentors, and then we go to the gala, a red carpet event where being interviewed by, I think there's probably like 8 different news outlets there, and then we have this amazing dinner, an awesome presentation performance, which you can look up on YouTube if you Google Writers of the Future 38 Gala. You can actually see the entire event. And I very much encourage that, because that is that's one of the things that motivated me to enter and pursue the contest, is watching that gala online and saying, I want to be there someday. And then just 4 short years later, I was. So if I can do it, then anyone can do it. It's all about setting a goal and then working towards that goal.
Let's talk a little bit about Gallows, if you don't mind.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us a little bit of the basic part of it and how you created it. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the baseline story is a bartender has to determine if his customer is a time-traveling tourist. The story is follows a guy who gets wrapped up in this FBI investigation, trying to determine if time travelers can be caught, as if it is a domestic terrorism threat. And it jumps. I love nonlinear storytelling, so it jumps back and forth from him trying to catch this customer revealing themselves, and then it jumps back to how he got wrapped up into the whole ordeal to begin with, and really digs into the trauma that got him psychologically invested and obsessed with helping the FBI catch these time travelers.
Wow, that's pretty exciting. How long did it take you to write it?
I'd say about 3 to 4 weeks or so. It started from a Reddit writing prompt. So I was just perusing Reddit, and sometimes people will post writing prompts to help other authors generate ideas. And that was one of several that I had just sitting in my idea box. And one day I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna dive into this one and give it a shot. And once I started developing the character of Gallows, it just started taking off. It just kind of wrote itself. It was very fun and uniquely easy story to write.
Now, how many words is it?
That one was, I believe, around 5,600 words, which is about average for a short story.
So very much for your service and what you're doing and your mission with your books. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Do you have a website now?
I do, yeah. I keep it pretty simple. It's desmondastaire.com. And then I'm also on Twitter and Instagram at Desmond Astaire. I love connecting with other readers and writers. So yeah, look me up and drop me a line. I'd love to connect.
And we'll see you later. And don't forget to go to KathrynRaakersWorld.com and also Let'sJustTalkRadio.com. That's where you'll be featured on our radio shows as well. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Hi, this is Kathryn Raaker of Kathryn Raaker's World and Let's Just Talk. Our guest today is really a famous author, and his name is Dean Wesley Smith, and he is writer of the future, judge, and he was on this last competition on the 38th edition. Am I correct?
That's right. That's right.
So let's hear a little bit about your background before we start talking about the last judging award.
Okay. Well, I'm also going to be the new editor of the book, starting with number 39 of Writers of the Future.
Great.
I've been a full-time fiction writer for about 40 years now. And
Don't look that old.
oh yeah, I am. And well, thank you. But yeah, I've been doing this for a long time, and and editing a lot also. And I've been a judge on Writers of the Future for well more than a decade every year. But now I'm going to be the new editor of the book. I'm not, and I'll still be a judge, but I'll also then put the book together every year, starting with number 39. But number 38 is coming out right now. That was edited by Dave Wolverton, who was also a long-term writer. I have about 200 novels published now, and I'm considered one of the most prolific writers that's still alive and working. I have 500-600 books out and that sort of thing. So
Wow.
you stick around long enough and it adds up. That's what's so fun with Writers of the Future. They work with the new writers, coming in. It really is Writers of the Future. I was the very first person 38 years ago across the stage of Writers of the Future. I was one of the Writers of the Future, and so I was the very first person to step on the stage at Writers of the Future to get an award. And now I'm the editor of the book next year.
Well, that's pretty exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of 39 years, but
Right. And you teach as well at these events, at the workshops, am I correct?
A little bit, yeah. I come in and talk about the new world of the indie publishing and that sort of thing. I do a lot of teaching in general from my website. You can get to it. It's on Teachable. We have maybe 200 or 300 different classes for writers that are online on Teachable, and so that's I do a lot of that, but I come in and help a little bit, but mostly it's Tim Powers, the professional writer Tim Powers, and Nina Creaky Hoffman and Orson Scott Card and people like that are teaching as well. Kevin J. Anderson, who does Dune with Brian Herbert, he's there teaching also. They have a lot of us teaching to help the new writers. We're all there to help the new writers.
Right. So it's so inspiring that you are doing this and love your mission.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, and helping the new writers with Writers of the Future. They are just, it's amazing what they do there. You know, they're just very, very focused on just this one book, you know, that comes out every year. And it is just I mean, the awards that took place in April was like the Academy Awards. It was just amazing. It was at the Taglian Center in Hollywood, and they put these young writers up for an entire week, teach them, you know, have us old time pros come in to teach them, and then they give them this awards banquet that is just like the Oscars. I mean, it's incredible.
And I told
Everybody's
John Goodwin that next
Uh-huh.
year, since I've been covering this all these years, I want to be invited.
Oh, yeah, it's fun. It is and fun, and you just can't believe that what they're doing for the new writers.
That's
It's you know, it was amazing. My first time through, it was the very first time they'd done it. It was when I won and got in there, and as a young writer, and I thought it was amazing. And they had it in a back room at a restaurant in Hollywood, and they didn't have the class, they didn't have anything. They were just getting started. And now it's built over all these 38 years into this
Yeah.
incredible event that really honors the new writers and hopefully kind of boosts them into a career. That's what the hope is. Not everybody makes it, of course, but it's surprising how many do.
You know, it's wonderful that you write the book, but the illustrator is actually very important to your book. Isn't that correct?
It's in the cover
It's
artist.
doctorate degrees.
Yeah, the cover artist is really, if it's a middle grade or down in that, the illustrations inside the book are critical to the book. And so yeah, it depends on what kind of book it is, but cover artists are always critical. I mean, that's why a reader picks up a book, is the cover.
Actually, that's what I'm excited about. And you know, to watch this wonderful profession start up again, because there's been a period of time where it's been really sad, you know, because of the pandemic and a lot of other things, right? But I'm finding, and I bet you are surprised when you find a doctor who is a science fiction writer.
Oh yeah. Oh well, there's quite a few scientists that are science fiction writers.
That's right, but
you don't have to be.
you don't
I'm
have
not a
to
scientist.
be. Yeah, you don't have to be, right?
Yeah.
And I think that I'm running into more and more doctors that have become fiction writers and science fiction writers and whatever, and it's amazing because it takes the stress off of them.
Yep. Yeah. It's when you get to, I mean, that's my writing computer back there behind me.
I see.
And I go back there, you know, and if I raise that blind, then there's the Las Vegas Strip. I live in Las Vegas, and I have a view
Know
of the
it
Strip
well. Know it
from my
well.
office here, and I just sit back there and make stuff up, and that's what fiction writing is you sit alone in a room and make stuff up, and that's your job description, and it doesn't get any better than that. That's the best job description I've ever seen. What do you do for a living? I sit alone in a room and make stuff up.
Well, I do the television and radio part of it.
Yep.
And feature people like yourself. And I just had John Goodwin on, and Emily, and I've been doing this for a lot of years,
Oh,
covering this, and
Looks like you enjoy it.
it's so exciting to be able to meet one of the judges. And I think, wasn't David McFarland a judge?
David Farland? Yes. Not
Yes.
McFarland. David Farland?
Farland.
Yes, he was a
Right.
judge. He tragically just passed away from an accident
Yeah.
this last year. He was the judge, coordinating judge, and he was the editor of the book at the same time. And he also was a long-term, in fact, Dave and I started in together. I think he won Writers of the Future 2 years after I was in the book. So he was in like number 3, I think. And he and I became good friends, and along with, you know, Kevin Anderson and a whole bunch of others who's also a judge. And we all kind of grew together in the profession. And all the time we were always helping Writers of the Future as much as we could, because it got us started. And so David Farland became the coordinating judge and the editor of the book. And then sadly he died this last fall, you know, losing a friend like that from a tragic accident.
Actually, I had him on a couple years ago.
Had Dave on? Yeah, was really nice.
He was a
Nice guy.
really super guy, and you know, it's amazing seeing all the talented people from all over the world now that are involved in this.
Oh yeah, it's from
And
every country. It seems
yeah,
like it seems it
it seems
seems like
like
it's
it.
every country.
I
Yeah.
know. So I'm so excited about talking to you, and you know, I would love to read your books.
Oh,
I happen to be a reader as well. I love books.
it's science fiction or mystery. I write mystery also.
I'll read both of them.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I'm really into it. Um, tell me what a typical day is when they come to Writers of the Future. What happens in the classes? Tell me.
Oh, they come in ahead of everybody, like a week before the ceremony. Sometime I think they come in on Sunday, and the ceremony's not till Friday.
Right.
And basically, they are in a really nice classroom,
Mhm.
with books, and it's like being in a library almost. And often, and then they are lectured to by some of the top writers. Tim Powers, Dave Farland, when he was alive,
Mhm.
was the leader on the whole thing. Tim Powers, who's been writing as long as I have, 40 some years, is the person who sort of teaches it and is the leader of it. And then they do all kinds of exercises. They are writing. In fact, at one point, Tim has them do a short story overnight. They have to come up with usually it's based from an object or something, like you just pick an object and say, write a short story on that. And they have to turn it in 24 hours. And so they do things like that. They really train them to be professional writers as much as possible. They lecture on the business. I come in and lecture on the indie publishing side, which is the new you can do it yourself world, which is about half of publishing now, because the New York side of publishing has gotten really small. And so writers are doing it themselves. We're forming our own companies, things like that. And they teach them all of that. It's across the board. And then, of course, then they have to get their dresses and their tuxes and all of that stuff for the big awards ceremony. And they get them all and they, run them through. We do practice sessions, literally just practicing how to read off a teleprompter. Is, for those of us who are reading, and are presenting, we go in the afternoon practice. So it's everything you could imagine to learn how to be a professional in the publishing industry. They try to have the young writers touch on it at some point or another. It's sort of the Writers of the Future is sort of all encompassing to help the beginning writers make a career like me. I mean, so
Look at you, and look at you today. It supports you, right?
oh, I've made my living at writing since 1987.
Right. And that's
So
that's the most
I was in Writers of the Future 38 years ago, which is I think 1983.
yeah.
And 5 years later, I was making my living, and it's never stopped. I've been in
Wow.
publishing, making my living since 1987. Sold my first novel in 1987 too. So it takes a while. I sold my first short story in 1974.
Wow.
And so there was from 74 to 87,
Right.
that was that growth period. In the middle there, I won Writers. I got into Writers of the Future. I wasn't one of the winners. I was just in the book. I was one of the runner-ups. And so even as a runner-up, you can move on to making a living and being a judge.
That's right. Now I have to take a short break
Okay.
for our sponsors, and we'll be right back with Dean Wesley Smith, Writers of the Future judge, author of how many novels?
About 200 now.
200. That's wonderful. Keep writing.
As long as I
Everybody
live.
excited. So where can they go to get information on buying your book, buying the wonderful 38th edition of L. Ron Hubbard's Writers of the Future and Illustrators of the Future book? Where can they go?
Any bookstore, anything online, anywhere. If for my books, you just plug in Dean Wesley Smith and Wesley, and a lot of books will come up. And then of course for Writers of the Future, just plug in Writers of the Future number 38. I'd highly recommend that if you are a young writer, to enter a story every quarter. It's free. There's no restrictions, and just read the rules and get a story in, and give us a chance to bring you to Hollywood and have a lot of fun. Jody Lynn Nye is the coordinating judge now. She's the one that's over all of us judges. And she gets to do the picking. And then what occurs is the judges, after she picks her top ones, and there's no names on anything. So we don't know any of these writers at all. It's just a story. And as judges, we get these stories and then we decide which ones we like the best and send it back in. And then there's a bunch of us everywhere from Robert Silverberg to, Tim Powers to a lot of us, Nina Creaky Hoffman. And then we all send our choices back in, and then they put it together as to who's the winner each quarter. And it's all blind judging. We just go for story. It's the quality of the writing, the quality of the story. And that's what makes it even better.
Have you ever been really surprised of seeing one of the authors of the books that you pick? Stories you pick?
Pretty much every year, to be honest with you. I'm like, I'll meet one of the young winners at the award ceremony in the spring. Actually, it was in the fall, and then it was in the spring because of the pandemic. But this last spring, you meet one of the writers, and I go, "Oh, you wrote that story?" It's just because we don't know their names. Now, I will be one of the lucky ones because as the editor of the book, I'll know their names ahead of time this time. But this will be my first year out of 39 years that I'll get to know the authors before I actually meet them.
Right.
And you have stories that you love. My first year, Jack Williamson was a judge. He was one of the grand masters of science fiction, sold his first short story in 1928.
Wow.
And I'd always been, my entire life I've been reading Jack Williamson, and I walked up to him just to say hello when in that very first award ceremony 38 years ago. And Jack said, "Oh, Dean, you're the one that wrote that great story." And he went on about my story. And, because he didn't know he didn't know either. And so it was just kind of like, wow, I'm getting complimented by one of the masters that I have read my entire life. To a young writer, that means everything. I mean, that was just amazing.
I want to thank you so much for joining me today on Kathryn Raaker's World. Where can people go to buy your books, to read about the wonderful L. Ron Hubbard illustrators and writers of the future? I need all that information from you.
Basically, deanwesleysmith.com is my website. I blog every day there. I always have something to say every day, usually aimed at writers in some way or another. And the Writers of the Future is just thewritersofthefuture.com. And it is, you get the books, any of my books or any issue of Writers of the Future anywhere online, in any of your favorite bookstores, everywhere. It's all around the world. All my books and Writers of the Future.
Thank you so much. You'll be appearing on both my television and radio shows. And I want to thank you so much. You'll get a copy of it as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And
thanks for having me.
And thank you for encouraging me. I am now encouraged.
You're on the right road.
Yeah, I know. Thank you so very much. And you can go to our website at KathrynRaakersWorld.com, our TV and our big website. You can also go on Let'sJustTalkRadio.com, and we have a chef show as well called The Chef You and I, a healthy cooking show.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot of fun. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you. Hi, this is Kathryn Raaker of Kathryn Raaker's World, our TV show, and Kathryn Raaker's Let's Just Talk Radio, which is syndicated, which we're really excited about. This is my 10th year on covering not only the judges, but the winners of the L. Ron Hubbard Illustrators of the Future and Writers of the Future. And I'm so excited to have the head judge, who's the person that is in charge, and it's Jody Lynn Nye. And she is a tremendous writer herself. And actually, she is also helping aspiring writers, as well as recently receiving the Polis Award. So I want to welcome you to my show,
Thank
Jody.
you.
I want to call you Judy. Don't ask me why, but Jody, welcome to our show.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
You're welcome. So, can you tell me, in your own words, a little bit about your career before L. Ron Hubbard's Writers of the Future?
Oh, well, it goes back quite a long way. I started out in game writing. I was writing modules for my then fiance, soon to be husband's game company, Mayfair Games. Then I moved on to write choose your own adventures and short stories, and then into novels, both science fiction and fantasy. And my first fantasy and my first science fiction book came out within a month of each other. So
Wow.
Since then, I've published about 56 books and about 175 short stories, most of them in anthologies. And I like to take chances. If somebody says, here, I've got this project, would you like to try? I usually say yes.
Well, that's the most wonderful thing is being a mentor to these young writers to start off with. And some of them aren't just young, they're older writers.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I mean, one of my oldest writers is 82, and he's a charmer. I mean, I have to tell you. So I don't think you're ever too old to write.
Oh, no. No.
And it gives people such a pleasure, especially during the pandemic. Were you surprised at the winners this year?
Not so much. They were all very talented. We had one who was 16 when they won, and we had one who was in his 70s.
Mm-hmm.
So it was quite a range, and in thought, in approach, in style, some fantastically talented people. And I was very pleased to be able to have a hand in bringing them through the event this year. You know, David Farland, who had been the coordinating judge before me, passed away in January. He had read all of their stories, and he was in charge of the project at that time. So now I'm judging stories and passing them along to the other judges to make their own assessments of them. So next year, they'll be all mine. I also teach the 2-day writers workshop at Dragon Con, and I have people coming in who are doctors and lawyers and politicians, as a matter of fact,
Wow.
and students. But you name a professional, I have probably had a student that practiced it.
So what do you think this year, was there a surprise you had this year at all?
The only quarter that we have finished with is the first quarter.
Uh-huh.
And there were some really stunning ones, including one very funny one that I just fell in love with, a couple of fantastic epics. And I am curious to see what I get in this quarter.
Mhm.
Naturally, we wait until the end to make the determination on what are the finalists that go to the other judges for assessment. So
Who makes the final decision? Who makes the final decision, though?
at what stage? I'm the one who decides which 8 go to the judges every quarter. So
Okay.
it's me.
That's you.
And I get to choose those, but I wait until I have read everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, this one is this one. This one is a magnificent epic fantasy. This one is a good futuristic science fiction. This one is near future. This one is military science fiction. This is humorous fantasy, and so on. And we try not to repeat the subgenre within the confines of the book. So if somebody has written a magnificent, say, well, Dave hated them, werewolf stories. If one of them becomes a winner in a quarter, then I will not put through any more werewolf stories, good as they are, because we've already got one for the book. So it's also a case that they live with learning what the market is like, because the anthology is a market. It's PG rated so that young people can read it as well as older people. We have standards that must be adhered to. We try to keep the swearing to a minimum. There are topics that are not touched on. There are, if it's a little too steamy, we can't use it. So within those confines, you still have an enormous scope of storytelling. and a lot of things that you can handle. It's wonderful to see where people go. I've been reading one today that I think is absolutely delightful. The most important thing is that not only is it a good story, but it has a good science fiction or fantasy element to it, something that brings about the ending that is important to the story itself. You can't just have a wonderful story about two people falling in love that is set in a fantasy world. The fantasy has to have something to do with it.
I can understand that.
Speculative fiction.
Is there a lot of, do you find there's a lot of dialogue in the stories, the short stories?
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Some people are very dialogue heavy, and that's okay as long as we know where the story is set and where it's going. The scripts have no place in this contest. Essays have no place. Poetry has no place. Screenplays have no place. Just stories.
Just stories.
Yeah.
And that's what I love. They're short stories, and in this volume 38, you have a lot of short stories to read. Correct?
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. The things
How
that
many are there in volume 38, Jody?
Well, there are 12 winners. There are always 12 winners. And usually there's a story or two from one of the judges, just because it shows people what these young people can aspire to, although some of them were so strong that I'm wondering why they weren't pros in the first place. There's usually an essay by Mr. Hubbard or a short story of his. There's an essay or two from the artist judges. So it's quite a thick book. I looked at the volume 34 last night, and it had 450 pages of text. So that's a lot. The 12 winners. Oh, and also occasionally a published finalist of the eight stories that are sent to each judge every quarter. Those are finalists. Those are considered finalists, but they are not necessarily winners.
Right.
So of the 5 stories that are left over every quarter, some of them are good enough that are might fill in the book a little bit. Dave always set aside a humorous story or two for consideration as a part of the final book, because humor, as I find to my cost, because I'm a humor writer, rarely gets prizes for anything. People tend to vote on things that they consider significant, even if the funny book is their favorite thing. My cat's tail is going by. They won't vote for it because they think their vote should go to something significant.
Right.
So this is a chance for somebody who writes something funny to actually make it into the book.
Well, you know, it's really funny. You said the cat. Well, one of my authors, who's a regular novelist, right? He had a manuscript that he sent me, and I read it, and it's called "Whatever Happened to the Smooth-Tongued Cat."
Well,
it's
probably
getting published. It's getting published. I'm so excited about it. I can't stand it. Tell me how long, when you first came on board, was it back in the 80s or 90s when you came on board, Jody?
Oh, no, actually, I'm the second youngest in terms of when I started with the contest. I came on in 2016.
Oh, wow.
And the newest one is actually SM Sterling, who came on 2 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So I only just, I had been very, very busy. And I wondered whether or not I had the time to do yet another thing. But then I discovered that most of my friends were already judges. So if they can do it, I figured I could do it. Yes.
I think that if you love something, it's not a chore. And, you know, I'm probably just as busy or busier than you are sometimes. And I don't know why I work until the middle of the night sometimes. But you know what? If you love what you do, it's a joy. It really is. And I think that, so is there anybody that surprised you this year as far as the story and you met them?
No, I think that a proficient writer can write anything.
Right.
I was delighted to meet all of them. I expect most writers will be introverts, and they are. I am an introvert myself.
Really?
Oh yes. Yeah. All right. Well, you're a PR person. You probably aren't, but it's
No, unfortunately, I'd like to be an introvert sometimes, really, to be
well, you're
honest.
an ambivert then. You're an extrovert
Yeah.
and an introvert. But I find it hard to make that approach. But for the sake of the writers, or the winners, I want to show them that it's okay to be there. It's okay to feel nervous about it. It's okay to be a little uncertain, but they should be proud of their work and they should be proud to be there. The gala that they get to participate in, a week-long workshop, is really a wonderful thing. They are given all sorts of instruction. Tim Powers and I did the seminars together this year, and we had a tremendous amount of fun. He is such a great guy. I've known him a very long time. Mm-hmm. So we just slotted into it, got along like ham and eggs. So we had a great time.
So you start out at what time in the morning, and when do you end when you have the workshops?
Oh, we start about 9, and it runs through anywhere from 4 to 6 o'clock. And on one of the days, starting at 2 p.m., they have to write a 24-hour story. They have to produce a story of any length that they can from 2 o'clock that day till 2 o'clock the next. Wow. And some of them end up staying up till all hours. It's amazing how sometimes they can be very chatty, and all of a sudden they fall dead silent because they must concentrate. They have to focus on what they're doing. And some of the stories were amazing, just absolutely amazing. Tim and Dave used to have a sort of joke that when you get the pile of manuscripts from the 12 winners, there were actually 15 this year because of some of them came from previous years because of the pandemic.
Right.
And Tim and Dave said that, well, we picked 3 out for workshopping because we throw them down the stairs, and then we take the 3 that have traveled the farthest, and then we workshop those. And this year we actually did throw them down the stairs.
Did you really?
We do. We have video.
It's hard.
Those were not actually the ones we chose, but we did throw them down the stairs.
It's hard to be a judge. I've been a judge before, and it's tough, especially. Don't ever do beauty contests. They're the hardest I've ever seen in my life. But it's amazing what people go through, for their craft or their art. And I found that it puts you into a different world. I mean, you could be really unhappy one day, and you sit down and you read this wonderful story or this wonderful book, and you're charged. You can't wait to go out and do whatever, Mm-hmm. And I think mentoring people, especially in the arts, is so important. Mm-hmm. And it's exciting. So, and you get people, like you said, from every age group, and they're so talented. How does your husband feel?
He's fine with that. He's actually a tremendously good editor. He worked in game design. He still designs games. He has been an editor and a teacher. He has advanced degrees in education and counseling, believe it or not. He used to own Mayfair Games, and he has packaged many, many books. He's Bill Fawcett and Associates. I'm the And Associates. So we have put together around 300 books, I think, of various kinds: game books, anthologies, memoirs, series of novels, and so on. And they have been very popular. So it gave me my first taste of editing, and that has helped me be a better teacher, is to look at something critically. You should always write and then look at it later as an editor, not as the writer, because you might have to take out something that you really loved putting into it, but it doesn't move the story.
We're really pushing out there for you all, and we really want people to go to the contest. You want to tell them where they can go to submit their manuscript or their short story?
Go to writersofthefuture.com. The link is there, along with the rules, which you should read. At the moment, you are allowed to submit up to a very generous 17,000 words, but we also take flash fiction. So anything from 500 words or 100 words, if you could do a story in that short a time, up to a virtual epic. And like I said, it needs to be speculative fiction. It can be any subgenre, nothing too dark. Remember, I said PG-13, but look over the guidelines, and you can submit once a quarter. So that means 4 stories a year. It'll give you a reason to buckle down and get things written,
Right.
and submit them.
And you're never too old, am I correct?
Never too old.
Or never too young. What's your limit? 16, is it? Or 14?
Well, the youngest writer to win has been 16.
That's what I thought.
In fact, this year's winner, I said that they were had just edged out the previous 16-year-old winner by, I guess, a month or two. But by the time they came to the event, they were already 17. So it was kind of amazing.
So, and the gala is really a formal, fun event, correct?
Yes, it's an actual black tie, red carpet event. Everybody gets into their very best, and jewelry, hairstyles, makeup, and show up, enjoy. It's a lot of fun. It is aired on Facebook and I think YouTube as well. So anyone can see it, but it is amazingly fun to be there.
I can imagine. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. And I want to thank you for your mission and what you're doing in mentoring writers of the future and illustrators of the future, and being the judge and having that wonderful job. So I know that you'll do really well this coming year as well as this past year.
Okay.
And everybody should go out and buy the book, which is coming out in June. Oh, it's out, isn't it? The 38th volume.
End of the week?
Next week. Next week
Yeah.
it comes out. Actually, I think it comes out on the 28th. And I'm excited. So give your website again, please. Your website.
It is mine is jodynye.com or jodylynnye.com, 3 N's, 3 Y's. And the writersofthefuture.com is where you'll find the information for submitting and the submission window, the submission portal. So go ahead and give it a go.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for
love
inviting
to
me.
have you on, and love to send you my books. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you real soon on Kathryn Raaker's World and Let's Just Talk. We'll see you soon.